remember the head labor and delivery nurse, who was not my nurse, but she was being called in very often. She came in and she finally like acknowledged me, and she was like, we're not there yet, but I just want you to know, like, if something really does go wrong, we get babies, like, we can have this baby out in 8 minutes with a C-section. And I was like, okay. And she was like, I don't want to say that to freak you out. Like, we're not at a C-section yet. And I was like, then it was starting to hit me, you know, like, stuff is, I mean, it's not going great. And the doctor that was on call, not on call, she was on, she came in and she was like, you're not progressing at all. Like, you're talking another like 12 to 24 hours of contractions like this, that are doing nothing. And at this point, it's not conducive for your body. And then, and she was like, so I just went, buckle up. It's going to be a while. And I was like, okay. My water did break at some point during this shit show. And, so somewhat naturally, like, I had Pitocin, but it did break on its own. They didn't break it for me. And, then stuff still wasn't progressing. And at that point they were like keeping an eye on Leo, and, he was probably squeezing his cord. So there were they call it non-reassuring fetal heart tones, something like that. I probably butchered that. But after I had him, they told me that he was not in any danger. He was not losing oxygen, but they couldn't tell, at the time. So my doctor came back in. I only saw my doctor twice during this shit show. This is not a doctor that I love, but she came in and she was like, it's time to go to a C-section. Like, it's just not looking good for you and for him. Like, we don't really know what's going on. Your placenta has been through way too much in uterus, and whatever organs were being like pulsated to a pulp. I don't know. And I remember glancing over at Scott, and he was head to toe in scrubs. And she said, do you have any questions? And I just I think I didn't want to cry in front of her because she's really intimidating, this doctor. So I said no. And they wheeled me into the OR. And this is one of the only other things that I remember. A lot of that is a blur. Like, I don't remember like at what point what organ was having issues and whatever. The last straw was Leo squeezing his cord, and me looking over at Scott and seeing him in scrubs. So they needed to get everything like ready, obviously. So for 2 minutes or so, while the anesthesiologist was like hooking me up and whatever, Scott wasn't in the OR with me. And my sister-in-law works in OB. She's a nurse anesthetist. And this is, by the way, in the middle of the night. This is like at 4:30 in the morning. So Scott texted his mom and sister and my mom and let them know, like, hey, they're taking Rachel to a C-section now. And his sister-in-law, or his sister, my sister-in-law, called the anesthesiologist that was on to let him know that that was her brother in there. And at that point they had called Scott back. They were like, can we call him back, like, before we get your curtain up? Like, they were cutting open. Like, but by the way, they were not kidding. They can get a baby out in 8 minutes or less. And they did. And I was like, you have to wait. Like, Scott's really squeamish about stuff, which is so stupid. But, so my sister-in-law called the anesthesiologist to let him know that that's her brother in there, like, extra care, you know, it's always nice to have, like, use your connections, whatever. And she didn't know, but they were cutting me open. So Scott got to talk to his sister in the OR, and she doesn't love that part of the story. Like, she's like, that was so embarrassing. Like, didn't mean to, like, intrude on your moment as a family and whatever, but it was really comforting for me to hear her voice on the like work phone, the OR phone. And then Leo was born, and he came out like ready to breastfeed, and that was kind of that. And they took me to recovery. At this point, I've been up for over 24 hours. They took me to recovery, and then they took me to labor and delivery. I was already there, and it's getting sunny in my face here. They took me to mother baby, and I remember they were like, we're going to take your catheter out now, because I got a catheter when they gave me my epidural, which is the best thing ever. You finally, for the first time in months, have relief from not having to pee. And it was amazing. They're like, we're going to take your catheter out. I was like, I asked them not to. I was like, please, no. Because I couldn't like move. And she was like, you are fine. My nurse was like, no nonsense. I loved my first nurse in mother baby, and she was like, you have so much she was like, I can tell you worked out your whole pregnancy. And I was like, what? I was like, yeah, I did. And she was like, well, I can tell, like you look like you're moving around great already. Like I was like, this could be worse. Like I was in so much pain. And she was taking away my catheter. She was like, you are able to walk to the bathroom and pee. Like, she was like, stop. And I loved her. So that's my birth story with Leo. And my doctors do not think that my body will go into labor on its own, because even with medical intervention, it really didn't go into labor on its own with Leo. And I was overdue by a decent amount. So it kind of makes me feel at peace with deciding to do a scheduled C-section. It is on my due date on August 30th, so I feel like I'm giving my body a fair chance to go into labor on its own. That's kind of a lie. I do think they're like a week off with my due date. I think I'm due a week later, or a little bit later. It's a long story, but I'm eager to share my experience with Miss Blake to see how recovery differs with a scheduled C-section, and just like not having the, I guess, anxiety of that shit show of I can never be induced because it obviously didn't work, and it was a shit show. I don't know. I was gonna say one more thing. I have had some of my doctors, my group of doctors, there's like 13 or something, so I rotate through for appointments, and some of them are definitely pro VBAC, and that's fine, and some are pro C-section, and that's fine too. One of them was saying, like my chances of a success rate for having a VBAC and whatnot, and I know a lot of people have had really great successful VBAC stories, but I can't be induced. I would have to go into natural labor on my own, and if I progress, we'll decide from there, blah, blah, blah. But I just set my only real birth plan this time with Blake is I don't want to end in an emergency C-section, because I really feel like that contributed to my postpartum anxiety quite a bit. I just felt like a bad mom. I felt guilty that I wanted him out so bad. I just, like, all the things, felt bad that I couldn't do it on my own. It was just not a great, like, feeling. So I don't want to end in an emergency again. Plus, it's an emergency surgery. Like, they're not being gentle, I guess. And my sister-in-law has said, she's like, they're kind of a violent surgery, because they can get a baby out in 8 minutes. Like, they're cutting through a lot of tissue and organs and skin and all that muscle. Makes me want to puke. But she was like, and they can do it in 8 minutes, so it's kind of crazy. So I don't want to end an emergency again. So at least by next week, Friday, I'll have another baby, and I will definitely share her birth story at some point after we're home and I've recovered a little bit, one way or the other, whether it's from a VBAC or from a C-section. So if you could keep me and my family, it's probably my family and I, in your prayers, I would really appreciate it. I'm headed to my last doctor's appointment before I have this sweet little girl.